Look, I know how this sounds. I'm fully aware that the moment the words leave my mouth, I'm cast as the villain in some Lifetime movie. But everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster when really I was just 21 years old and scared out of my ever-loving mind. My name is Thea. I'm 32 now, and yes, 11 years ago, I left my son, Jasper, when he was 7 months old. But here's the part that gets conveniently edited out of the story everyone in this town tells themselves. Here's what nobody wants to hear. Graham was suffocating me. It wasn't a malicious, deliberate act. It was something quieter, more insidious. It was the slow, creeping death of 1,000 expectations. The guy worked these insane hours at the firm, a climbing paralegal on his way to being a lawyer, and then he'd come home and expect me to just sit there, playing house like some perfect, serene little mommy. He got to be the hero, the provider, the man with a purpose, while my purpose was supposed to shrink until it fit within the four walls of a nursery. And excuse me for needing more than the smell of dirty diapers and the repetitive loop of baby talk for the rest of my life. I wasn't a porcelain doll. I had ambitions, dreams, a whole personality that was being systematically erased and replaced with the singular title of mom. I wasn't ready to be tied down to some guy who thought changing 2 diapers in a week made him a candidate for Father of the Year. Graham would perform these small, perfunctory tasks with an air of profound sacrifice, as if he were doing me this huge favor by participating in the life of the child we created. Honestly, it takes 2 people to make a baby, and I don't remember him asking my permission before he unilaterally decided we were playing family for the long haul. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but his vision for our future was, and it didn't include a chapter where I got to be anything but Jasper's mother. The whole thing felt like a trap, elegantly laid and socially approved. Everyone was so quick to praise him for stepping up, for being such a stand-up guy, while I was just supposed to gratefully disappear into the role of motherhood. Like that's all I was ever good for. The girl who got pregnant too young and was lucky enough to have a man who'd stick around. My identity was a footnote to his heroism. So when I finally had enough, when the silence in that house became so loud it was screaming, I left. But in my mind, I wasn't abandoning Jasper. I was saving him. I was giving him a chance to have a stable, happy life with Graham, instead of a mom who was drowning right in front of his eyes. A mom who felt a flash of resentment every time he cried, not because of him, but because of what he represented, the end of me. I thought leaving was the most mature, the most selfless thing I could do. I was recognizing I wasn't ready, that I would break if I stayed, and that Jasper deserved better than a broken mother. But, of course, that's not how the story was told. Graham, the master of his own narrative, turned everyone against me. My own family. His family. Our friends. He made me look like the villain, the cold, heartless woman who walked out on her own child. When really, I was just a kid myself, making the only decision I could to survive. I spent the next 11 years figuring myself out. I wasn't on some extended vacation, despite what I'm sure everyone imagines. I worked as a waitress in Portland, a barista in Austin, a receptionist in Chicago. I took community college classes. I went to therapy. I dated men who saw me, Thea, not just a potential mother for their future children. I actually grew as a person. I built a life. A real one. And now that I'm ready, truly, deeply ready to be the mom Jasper deserves, suddenly I'm the bad guy all over again for wanting a relationship with my own son. The faint glow of a television flickers through the living room window of the house, his house. The one I picked out, the one I painted. My hands are slick with sweat on the steering wheel of my rented sedan. I've been parked here for 20 minutes, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I'm 32 years old, I have a stable partner, a good job waiting for me back home, and a sense of self I fought tooth and nail to build. But sitting here, outside this house, I feel like that scared 21-year-old all over again. But this time, I'm not running away, I'm running toward something. I kill the engine, the sudden silence deafening. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I open the car door, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. Each step up the familiar concrete walkway is a battle. The porch light is on, casting a welcoming yellow glow that feels like a lie. This isn't a homecoming, this is an invasion. But I have to do it, for Jasper, and for me. I raise my hand, my knuckles hovering just inches from the dark wood of the door, and I knock. The sound echoed in the quiet suburban street, louder than I expected, a definitive statement of my arrival, seconds stretched into an eternity. I could hear the faint sound of the TV being muted, then footsteps, heavy and deliberate, approaching the door. My throat went dry. I rehearsed my opening line 100 times on the drive here, but now my mind was a blank slate of pure panic. The lock clicked, and the door swung inward, and there he was. Graham. 11 years had carved new lines onto his face. There were threads of silver at his temples, a permanent tiredness etched around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But the set of his jaw was the same stubborn, unyielding. He was wearing a faded college sweatshirt and jeans, the picture of domesticity. For a split second, his eyes registered confusion, a flicker of non-recognition. Then, it hardened into something else. Disbelief, quickly followed by a dark, simmering anger. "Thea," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. My name sounded foreign and ugly coming from his lips. "Graham," I managed, my voice thin. Can we talk?" He didn't move. He filled the doorway, a human barricade between me and the life I'd left behind. Talk? What is there to talk about? It's been 11 years. It's 10 o'clock at night. I know. I'm sorry for the time. I didn't want to come when Jasper was awake. I thought it would be better this way. Mend. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped him. Better? You think anything about you showing up here is better? You don't get to decide what's better for Jasper. You lost that right a long, long time ago. The words were like a physical blow. That's not fair, Graham. I was a kid. I was struggling. We were all struggling. He shot back, his voice rising, a low growl that I remembered all too well. It was the sound that came before a fist met a wall. The difference is, I stayed. I did the work. I raised our son. You ran off to find yourself. He said the words with such dripping sarcasm it felt like an insult. I'm different now, I pleaded, my carefully constructed composure beginning to crumble. I'm in a good place. I have a partner, Flynn. He's a wonderful man. I'm stable. I'm reliable. I'm ready to be a mother, his mother. At the mention of another man's name, something in his eyes went cold. Oh, you're ready now? Now that the hard part is over? Now that he's a person and not just a screaming baby keeping you up all night? You don't get to just waltz back in here after a decade and pick up where you left off. Life doesn't work that way, Thea. I'm not trying to pick up where I left off. I know I missed things. I know I have to earn his trust, but I deserve a chance. He deserves to know his mother. He has a life, Graham hissed, leaning forward slightly. A good one. A stable one. Without you. You showing up now only confuses him. It hurts him. You think you can just reappear and everything will be fine? You're selfish. You were selfish then, and you're selfish now. This isn't about him. This is about you, trying to ease your own guilt. That's not true, my voice cracked. This is about him. It's always been about him. Leaving was about him. He actually scoffed, a look of utter contempt on his face. You keep telling yourself that if it helps you sleep at night, you abandoned him, Thea. You use whatever pretty words you want. You were drowning. You were finding yourself, but it all boils down to the same thing. You left. He said that word abandon like it was a verdict, a final, unchangeable judgment on my entire existence. The past I'd worked so hard to outrun had just caught up to me on this doorstep. I'm not leaving town, Graham, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I had to show him I was serious. I'm here to stay. I want to be in his life. His expression was stone. You're not welcome here. Stay away from my son. He didn't wait for a reply. He simply stepped back and slammed the door in my face. The solid, definitive thud echoed the finality of his words. The porch light clicked off, plunging me into darkness. I stood there for a long moment, the phantom pain of the slammed door vibrating through the air. The anger and resolve that had propelled me here curdled into a familiar, hollow ache. He hadn't changed at all. Still controlling, still the judge and jury of my life. I stumbled back to my car, my body trembling, not with fear this time, but with a cold, hard rage. This was just the beginning. The only place I had to go was my sister's house. Paige lived just 20 minutes away, in a neat little duplex that always smelled faintly of lavender and judgment. She'd been cautiously supportive on the phone when I told her I was coming back, her tone laced with that familiar older sister warning. Don't mess this up, Thea. When I showed up on her doorstep, mascara streaked and shaking, she let me in without a word. She made me a cup of chamomile tea that I held with trembling hands, the warmth doing nothing to thaw the ice in my veins. He slammed the door in my face, I whispered into the steam. Paige sighed, a long, weary sound. She sat across from me at her small kitchen table, her arms crossed. What did you expect, Thea? Did you think he was going to roll out the red carpet? You've been gone for 11 years. I expected him to be an adult, I snapped, the anger flaring up again. I expected him to at least listen. But he's still the same person. He just wants to punish me. He wants to be the martyr, the perfect single dad who overcame the tragedy of his runaway wife. He is a single dad, Thea. He's the one who dealt with the fevers, the scraped knees, the parent-teacher conferences. He was there. And I wasn't. I get it. I slammed the mug down on the table, tea sloshing over the rim. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think that hasn't haunted me every single day for the last decade? But why does no one remember what it was like back then? I had postpartum depression, Paige. I told you. I told him. I told anyone who would listen that I was drowning. And what did he do? He told me I was being dramatic. He told me to focus on the baby instead of myself, like my own mental health was some kind of selfish indulgence. Paige looked away, her gaze falling on a framed photo on her counter. It was of her, Graham, and a much younger Jasper at a birthday party. I wasn't in it. Of course I wasn't. He did the best he could, she said softly. It was hard on him too. The defensiveness in her voice, the way she instantly sided with him, made me realize my battle wasn't just with Graham. It was with the entire narrative he had so carefully crafted. The next morning, after a sleepless night on Paige's lumpy sofa, I decided I needed to try a different approach, a flanking maneuver. I needed an ally, or at least someone who might listen with an ounce of objectivity. I thought of his mother, Lorraine. Over the years, our contact had been sporadic but consistent. I sent Christmas cards with generic updates. She'd call once or twice a year, our conversations stilted but not unkind. She was a mother. I thought she, of all people, might understand the suffocating pressure I had felt. I found her number and dialed, my heart thumping. Thea, is that you, dear? Her voice was as soft and lilting as I remembered. Hey, Lorraine. It's May. I heard you were back in town. Paige mentioned it. Is everything all right? I'm fine. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I came back to see Jasper. I'm ready to be in his life now. I braced myself for the lecture, the disappointment. Instead, she was quiet for a moment. Oh dear. That's a complicated situation. I know at Island, but he's my son. Graham won't even let me talk to him. He's turned everyone against me. Graham has just been trying to protect the boy, she said, her tone gentle but firm. It's been just the two of them for so long. Jasper is a happy, well-adjusted child. Smart, funny, he has your eyes, you know. A small, painful smile touched my lips. Does he ever ask about me? The hesitation on the other end of the line was my answer. Then she said something that made the blood drain from my face. Graham has handled it very delicately. He told Jasper that his mother was very sick for a long time, and that she couldn't take care of him properly. That you needed to go away to get better. Sick. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and condescending. Not depressed, not overwhelmed, not a scared young woman who made a desperate choice. Sick, like I was some kind of mental patient, unstable and unreliable. It was the perfect, blameless narrative for Graham. It made him look noble, a man protecting his son from a broken, damaged woman. It was a lie wrapped in a veneer of compassion. I wasn't sick, Lorraine, I said, my voice dangerously low. I was young and I was struggling, and his father offered no support. He belittled my feelings until I thought I was going crazy. Any normal person would understand that being a mother at 21 is terrifying. Well, Graham did his best in a very difficult situation, she recited, as if reading from a script he'd handed her a decade ago. He's a good father, Thea. The conversation ended soon after, with polite but hollow promises to talk again. I hung up the phone, the full weight of Graham's manipulation crashing down on me. He hadn't just turned Jasper against me. He had rewritten our history. He'd created this distorted portrait of me as a tragic, flawed creature, and he'd hung it in the gallery of his family's minds for 11 years. They all saw me through his filter. And if his own mother believed it, what chance did I have with my own son? The need to see him was a physical ache, a raw, gnawing hunger in the pit of my stomach. Not just to know he was okay, Lorraine had told me that much, but to see it for myself, to lay my own eyes on the child I had created, the boy who existed for me only in old, faded photographs and painful imaginings. I knew it was reckless. I knew it bordered on stalking. But I couldn't help it. After the phone call with Lorraine, I drove to Jasper's elementary school, my hands gripping the wheel. I wasn't going to approach him. I wasn't going to cause a scene, I just needed a glimpse. A single, solitary proof of his existence. I parked across the street, partially hidden by the thick branches of an oak tree, and waited. The school was a cheerful brick building with colorful murals painted on the walls. It looked like a happy place. The thought brought both comfort and a sharp pang of jealousy. When the final bell rang, a wave of noise and energy spilled out of the front doors. Kids with backpacks and lunchboxes swarmed the sidewalk, their high-pitched laughter filling the air. My eyes scanned the crowd frantically, searching for a face I wasn't even sure I'd recognize. What if I missed him? What if he walked right past me? And then I saw him. It was like getting punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. He was taller than I'd expected, lanky, with that charming awkwardness of a boy on the cusp of his teenage years. He had my dark, wavy hair, the kind that always curled at the ends, no matter how you tried to tame it. But his jawline was all Graham, that same stubborn, determined set. He was laughing with a group of friends, his head thrown back, and the sound, even from across the street, felt like a memory I should have had. He looked so normal, so happy, and that fact made me feel two things at once. An immense, swelling pride, and a furious, bitter anger. I was proud because he was clearly thriving. But I was angry, because I'd had no part in making him that way. I was a biological footnote to this happy child's life. I watched as Graham's familiar gray SUV pulled up to the curb. Jasper said goodbye to his friends and climbed into the passenger seat. Through the windshield, I could see them talking. Graham ruffled Jasper's hair, and Jasper swatted his hand away playfully. They were laughing together. It was a perfect, mundane snapshot of a life I was supposed to be in. A movie of the family I should have been a part of. Graham looked older from this distance, more tired, but the smile he gave his son was genuine and warm. It was a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in over a decade. In that moment, I felt like what I was, a complete outsider, peering through a window into my own life. That's when the grief I had suppressed for 11 years finally broke through the wall of my anger and justifications. It was a tidal wave of pure loss. I thought about all the years I'd missed, all the birthdays, the Christmases, the first lost tooth, the first day of school, all the scraped knees I didn't get to kiss, all the bedtime stories I didn't get to read. Graham had gotten all of it. He had hoarded all those precious first moments while I was waitressing in another state, telling myself I was building a better life. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. I wasn't just crying for the past. I was crying for the monumental task ahead of me. This wasn't just about convincing Graham to let me see Jasper. This was about finding a way to fit into that picture I'd just witnessed. It was about proving to my son, to Graham, to everyone, that I wasn't just a ghost from the past, that I deserved to be part of the family I had helped create. As Graham's SUV pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street, my sadness began to harden into something else. Determination. If Graham thought he could keep me away with his lies and his carefully constructed single dad sob story, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I wasn't going to miss any more of Jasper's life. Not one more day. Sitting in my parked car, the image of Graham and Jasper laughing together burned into my mind. Something inside me shifted. The pleading, heartbroken woman who had stood on Graham's porch 2 nights ago was gone. The raw grief had crystallized into a cold, clear focus. Emotion wasn't going to win this. Begging wouldn't work. I had to be smarter. I had to be strategic. I spent the rest of the day in a corner of the public library, the smell of old paper and quiet ambition filling the air. My laptop was my weapon. My search history became a litany of desperation and resolve. Biological mother's parental rights after abandonment. Establishing visitation in state. Challenging sole custody. The legal jargon was dense and overwhelming, but one fact shone through the murky text like a beacon. I still had rights. Even though I'd been absent, Graham couldn't just legally erase me. I hadn't signed anything. My name was still on the birth certificate. No matter how much he wanted to play the victim, I had options. Legal, binding options. And I was going to use them. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Graham's reaction wasn't about protecting Jasper at all. It was about protecting himself. For 11 years, he had been the sole hero of this story. The noble single father who stayed when the flighty, unstable mother flew away. He had built his entire identity around that narrative. He'd received sympathy, admiration, and praise for it. My return threatened that entire facade. If I came back and proved I was a stable, loving person, it would complicate his simple, heroic tale. It would mean he might have to share the role of parent, share the spotlight, and the Graham I knew couldn't handle that. His ego was too fragile. That's when the darker memories started to surface. The ones I had pushed down for years because it was easier to remember the general feeling of suffocation than the specific ugly details. I started making a different kind of list, not of legal statutes, but of ammunition. I remembered his anger, not just the quiet, simmering resentment, but the explosive flashes of it. The time he got frustrated with a flat-packed bookshelf and punched a hole clean through the drywall. He'd patched it up and we never spoke of it again. But I never forgot the shock of that violence. I remembered his drinking. It was never a full-blown problem. Not then, but it was a creeping habit. The way he'd need 2 or 3 whiskeys every night after work just to unwind. The way his arguments would get just a little bit meaner after that 3rd glass. He probably thought nobody noticed, but I did. And I remembered all the times he wasn't the perfect, ever-present father he pretended to be. The weekends he'd drop Jasper off with Lorraine so he could go out with his work friends. The times he'd put his own needs, his own social life, his own ambition, before the needs of our infant son. He'd constructed this myth of selfless fatherhood, but I was there for the first chapter. I knew the truth. A cold, ugly thought crept into my mind. If he wants to make this a fight, then I'm ready to fight dirty. The thought was immediately followed by a wave of shame. Was this who I was now? Someone willing to sling mud and dredge up the past just to get what I wanted? But a stronger voice, a more desperate one, answered back. This isn't to hurt Graham. This is to save Jasper. Jasper deserves to know his real mother, not the cartoon villain Graham has created in his head. This is because I love my son, even if I haven't been able to show it for 11 years. And I'm doing this because I am tired of being punished for being human. The shame receded, replaced by a grim resolve. I wasn't asking for his permission anymore. I was done being treated like some kind of criminal for making a difficult decision when I was barely an adult. I've spent 11 years growing up, and now I was ready to share my life with my son. Graham could try to block me, but he was about to find out that I wasn't that scared 21-year-old anymore. I was a woman who knew what she wanted, and I knew his weaknesses. Armed with my newfound resolve and a folder full of printed legal articles, I decided on a more formal approach. If Graham had built a system to keep me out, I would have to challenge that system head-on. My first target, the school. It was the center of Jasper's world, a place where, as his mother, I should have some standing. The next morning, I dressed carefully, choosing a professional-looking blouse and slacks. I wanted to look stable, responsible, like the person I now was. Walking into the school office felt surreal. The air buzzed with the energy of children, and the walls were covered in bright, messy artwork. For a moment, I let myself imagine coming here for a parent-teacher conference, beaming with pride as a teacher told me Jasper was a bright student. I approached the front desk, where a kind-faced woman, with a name tag that read, Brenda, looked up at me with a welcoming smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes, hello. My name is Thea Collins. My son Jasper Sterling is a student here. I was hoping I could get some information about being added to the contact list, and perhaps learn more about the Parent-Teacher Association." Brenda's smile didn't falter, but a flicker of confusion crossed her eyes. She typed Jasper's name into her computer. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. The welcoming expression was replaced by one of careful, professional discomfort. "I see," she said slowly, looking from her screen back to me. "Mr. Graham Sterling is listed as the primary guardian." "Lau." "Yes, he is," I confirmed, keeping my voice even and pleasant. "I'm Jasper's mother. I've been living out of state, but I've moved back permanently and I'd like to be involved in his education." Brenda gave me a tight, sympathetic smile. "I understand. It's wonderful that you want to be involved. However, according to our records, Mr. Sterling is the sole legal guardian on file. Any changes to the emergency contacts, pickup authorizations, or access to records would need to be approved and initiated by him directly." Another wall. An invisible, bureaucratic wall that Graham had clearly built years ago. He had systematically removed me, not just from their home life, but from every official aspect of Jasper's existence. I was a non-entity. A ghost with a birth certificate. "So, you're saying that even as his biological mother, I can't even be listed as an emergency contact without his permission?" I asked, a sharp edge creeping into my voice. "I'm afraid so," Brenda said, her tone apologetic but firm. It's school policy. It's for the child's safety and to respect the legal guardianship arrangements we have on file. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that the man whose permission she needed was a manipulative liar who had poisoned my son against me. I wanted to tell her I had rights. But I knew it would be useless. She was just a secretary following the rules. Graham's rules. I see, I said, my voice strained. Thank you for your time. I turned and walked out of the office, the cheerful sounds of the school now feeling like a mockery. I made it to my car before the frustration boiled over. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel, a strangled cry of rage escaping my lips. He had thought of everything. He had spent the last decade building a fortress around their life, and I was on the outside, throwing pebbles at the stone walls. But as the initial wave of fury subsided, it was once again replaced by that cold, hard determination. This wasn't a setback, it was just more evidence, more proof of his unreasonable behavior. If he was going to use the system against me, then